today, but I think is extremely important also. 1 Samuel, chapter 16, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse in Bethlehem, for I provided myself a king among his sons." Now remember that word, a king among his sons. And Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears me, sees me, or hears about me, you'll kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Then invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do. You shall anoint for me the one I name to you." So Samuel did what the Lord said and went to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming and said, "Do you come peaceably?" And he said peaceably, "I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." Then he sanctified Jesse and his sons and invited them to the service, to the sacrifice. So it was when they came that he looked at Eliab, that's one of his sons, and said, "Surely this is the anointed one before me." But the Lord said to Samuel, No. Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So Jesse called Abinadab, that's another son, and made him pass before Samuel, and he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse made Shema pass by, and said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Thus Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. Say 7. 7. And Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all the young men here?" And then he said, "There remains yet the youngest, and there he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we will not sit down till he comes here." So he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, with bright eyes, and good looking. He was alone. And the Lord said, "Arise and anoint him, for this is the one." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. I love it. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, David, from that day forward. So Samuel arose and went to Ramah. Now, how does this text that I have just read to you, how can it possibly apply to our lives 3,000 years later? It's an old story. Famous old story. The selection of David. It is interesting that today is Palm Sunday, which commemorates the day Jesus rode in Jerusalem as the crowd shouted, "Hail the King! Hail the King!" I can hear them shouting. And those early believers that were following Jesus believed he was going to be their king and overcome their oppressor, Rome. Now you know this story. But they never dreamed that he would die on a cross outside the city. That was not their focus at all. They never dreamed that would happen. They thought this was the king. This is the end of Rome. Now we're going to have our own king and we'll have our own nation. But it didn't happen that way. And our message today, when you don't see what you want to see. I want you to hear that. It's a very important point. When you don't see what you want to see. When you don't see what you expect to see. When you don't hear what you expect to hear. This is our story, and this is the point of this chapter that the Lord has spoken to my heart about. If you have tasted any degree of failure in your life, David's life story will certainly reveal the grace and mercy of God. And I want to assure you today that God still looks at the heart. Amen. Say amen. Amen. I want to make sure you're with me today. This is a good lesson. I got excited about it all week long. And I'm excited about next week's lesson. God looks at the heart. Well, you and I, we don't see the heart. By that mean, it doesn't mean the heart. It means the inner thinking of a man. What's on his mind? What is his motives? And this is what our text is about. Not the outward appearance. Because we have a tendency to make decisions on the outward appearance. That's what this lesson is about again. In our text, David is a nobody. Have you ever felt that way? About your walk with the Lord? You even wonder at times, God, do you even know I exist? Now, maybe I'm the only one that's ever felt that way, and that's good if it is. But if you've ever felt that way, you can relate to the story. The first point in our text is from the prophet Samuel. And he is told to do something. He's told to do something that he's fearful of. He is afraid of Saul the king. So when he gets this order to go to Bethlehem to see Jesse, he knows that the king is after him. The king is mad at him. This is the beginning of a sequence of events. His going to Bethlehem. This just isn't something that casually come along. This is a sequence of events that is happening. And that is exactly how God works. And you may be called to do something that you're not happy with. Amen. I'm not happy with that. I don't like that. But God's told you. God has called you. And our job is to obey and not argue with God. And neither did Samuel. The lesson of Samuel is the fact. He obeyed even in the face of danger, or a case of being misunderstood. Now, how many times, oh, come on, how many times has God told you or me to do something and we didn't want to do it because maybe we would be misunderstood? Remember I told you about the lady? I don't know if I told you the run-up story on this or not, but remember I told you the lady that called my wife and said she had a brain tumor and she needed us to pray. And I was at the store the other day and she walked, remember, did I tell you about this? She walked by and I didn't pray for her. And I thought, what is wrong with me? Well, I was back at the store the other day. Guess what?
She was there.
I got that moment again. And guess what I did?
You prayed.
I went over and prayed for her. Right, she's working the cash register. And she's looking at me, and I'm just standing there, kind of just saying to her, you know, I'm praying, and just tears started to come to her eyes. I know that God was doing something in that life. Amen. Did I feel good? Absolutely did I feel good. I had obeyed the Lord. And it isn't that I didn't want to obey the Lord, but I didn't feel up to it at the first time. Well, the truth is, I was up to it the first time. You're always up to it the first time. It's not something that you have to wait for. Our second point is a sensitive ear to the voice of God. You ever heard somebody say to you, oh, if I could just hear from God. Oh, if I could just hear from God. Oh, if I just knew what to do. Oh, if I could just hear from God. I know I could do I know I could do this. See, what looked good to Samuel did not look good to God. This is a very important point. To hear the voice of the Lord. And don't say to me, well, Pastor, I'm not holy. And stop that. Because that's not true. He said in His Word, He said, I will never leave you or forsake you. Am I right or am I wrong? Amen. That's what He said. So He's always with us. How many times have we all made mistakes because it looked good? It just looked good, baby. This is the way to go. This is what to buy. This is what to say. This is where to go. This is. And all the time, God is yelling at us. No, 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 no. Yeah, I can say that because I've been there. Sure. If I only listened in my mind, I know it was wrong. I know it was wrong. We've all been there. This is why the story of David is so good, because it's about a man who made horrible mistakes and God forgave him. Amen. It is one of the most important commands, I believe one of the most important